Well, this is emerging as one of the big trade stories of our times, and it's all being carried out in secret. I'm talking about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, an agreement that would bring down trade barriers between Pacific Rim countries, the likes of the United States, Japan, and of course Australia as well. Now, there are many benefits here. Many say it will level the playing field, it will open up trade, it will increase investment. But there are also criticisms. Those that say that much of what we're going to see here is going to take away the ability of countries to make laws for themselves, especially when it comes to internet privacy. It's going to have a big impact on innovation and really open up the door to a lot of more restrictions on things such as copyright. Well, Angela Daly has written about this. She's from the Swinburne University of Technology and joins me now. Angela, what are your concerns about the impact on innovation and technology through the Trans-Pacific Partnership?
Well, Stan, thank you very much. My concerns are, firstly, that this treaty, as you said, has been negotiated in secret, and there are provisions in the treaty which may have a very strong impact on Australian consumers and innovators, yet we don't really know what they are, and there is no public scrutiny of this treaty and these provisions. And the provisions themselves, which are concerning, are increasing protection for copyright and some very stringent copyright enforcement, particularly involving internet service providers. And there could potentially be some kind of very wide-ranging surveillance of Australian citizens and consumers using the internet to see whether they, in their general course of business on the internet, are doing anything that might possibly be infringing copyright. And it is my concern that this may institute some kind of mass surveillance system similar to that the federal government decided against implementing last year.
Now, we'll get to the surveillance in just a moment, but when we talk about copyright protection, what is wrong with preserving the tightest possible copyright restrictions to allow people to protect their own interest, their own innovation?
Well, on the one hand, Australia itself, according to statistics from IP Australia, is actually a net importer of intellectual property. So this is not about protecting Australian innovators. This is about stopping Australian citizens having access to research, having access to cultural products coming from abroad. And in increasing copyright protection, what we're really doing is stopping or making it more difficult for Australian consumers to get this material at a fair price. And on the other hand, a lot of increased copyright protection, there is very little evidence to say that this is actually necessary on the one hand to protect and also inspire innovation. And on the other hand, it has some very bad effects on, for instance, innovators and creators that want to use or reuse, remix inventions and creative material that is already there.
Now, Angela, when you talk about surveillance, what are the types of activities that authorities will be looking out for, and what would the potential penalties be?
Well, firstly, given that what we've seen so far in the leaked texts of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, it seems that there will be very large incentives, if not kind of actual legislation that should be enacted in countries such as Australia to encourage and or force internet service providers to monitor the activity of their users, and including to prevent infringement. So not even actual infringements, but also they should be monitoring to prevent infringements, which could be things like shutting down peer-to-peer file sharing sites, which are used sometimes to infringe copyright or circulate material that infringes copyright. But on the other hand, these are also used to distribute many other kinds of content and material which do not infringe copyright at all. And so this is very concerning about the ability of Australian citizens to receive information as well as to exercise their rights to receive information.
So if I'm an ordinary consumer and I'm looking at buying an e-book, importing music, being able to access this material online, How would my life change once the TPP was enacted?
Well, like I said before, we're not entirely sure exactly what the TPP says or what the final draft will be. So any answer I give now is a very kind of preliminary and interim answer based on what has been leaked so far. But certainly in terms of digital content, it seems that the TPP will give the owners, usually large corporate rights holders, usually based outside of Australia, much more powers about precisely what kind of content Australians will receive and how they will receive it, and especially when it comes to digitised content, which often includes what are known as technical protection measures. These are kind of some digital locks on the content which might prevent it from being copied or from being accessed, or even, for instance, an ebook which cannot be read aloud by the computer. This kind of treaty, from what we gather so far, will give the rights holders many powers and very strong powers to manage how consumers use and view the content, including the content that they have legally purchased. So this is not like purchasing a book in the olden days where you can give it to a friend, you can read it as many times as you want, you can write on it, you can even photocopy it within reason. In fact, this may prevent all sorts of uses that we have enjoyed in life so far.
Angela, one of the concerns is the ability of governments to be able to make laws to suit their own interests. How would that be affected?
Well, potentially, for instance, in Australia, by the government signing up to such a treaty, this could really impact upon domestic law reform, which is going on at the moment, which seems to be proceeding along a path to give more rights and stronger protection to users, as well as kind of rebalancing the rights of users, content creators, innovators, and corporate rights holders as well. And so if the government signs this treaty and it becomes part of domestic law, then it will be difficult to enact these laws which might give users, for instance, a fair use exemption, which is what seems to be coming through in the current Australian Law Reform Commission's review of copyright law here.
Just finally then, Angela, is there an apathy that surrounds this? Do you think people are just simply not aware of what is taking place here because of the secrecy of the negotiations?
Well, certainly it seems that this is a form of what is known as policy laundering. So governments negotiating secret treaties that are not open to the public, that are not open to media scrutiny, in order to get through provisions that would be very controversial if they were subject to public scrutiny or even going through a parliamentary process. And intellectual property is definitely a very contested and controversial area where I think in any event users themselves, normal people, citizens and so on, are becoming more aware of the power of corporations to manage what they do online on the one hand, and are very resistant to this too, especially given they seem to be more restricted in their use of content than they were in the pre-digital world. And so I definitely think this is very concerning, and that the government probably has a strong interest in keeping these negotiations secret and away from public scrutiny.
Angela Daly, again, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.